All right, so I have Bobby Johnson, a guy, activist. I know him from Facebook, in Florida politics, and we had a bit of a disagreement. And I felt like it was an interesting conversation to have on in a call, in a little debate discussion type of format. So we're gonna have that conversation. He disagreed with my take that we should be voting for Kamala Harris, and I'm very into and excited by the prospect of voting to for Kamala, and he is not. So I guess to start, what is the core of your disagreement with my position? So I guess my position is it's good that Joe Biden dropped out. He wouldn't have won, and he wasn't. He just isn't healthy enough. So him dropping out was necessary if Democrats want to win. Kamala is undoubtedly going to be the nominee. The party is backing her. Not just like the party elites, but just the majority of the party is with her. We're still likely going to have a open convention, so technically anybody that wants to compete against her can compete against her. But she's probably going to dominate it, and she's going to be our nominee. So there's people like AOC, uh, Maxwell Frost, among many other politicians lining up, progressive politicians, Jamal Bowman lining up behind her, and I'm with them. So I'm curious, uh, what's wrong with that position?
Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with that position, and I think it's fine for you to take that position. But there are a lot of other people who oppose Joe Biden, primarily due to his foreign policy, for issues that extend beyond his age and his fitness for office, um, that they're not satisfied with the Kamala Harris ticket. I think that that's understandable. I agree with that position. I believe that unless Vice President Harris does something substantial to distance herself from the foreign policy of the current administration, which doesn't seem to be the strategy of the DNC at this point, she's going to suffer the same electoral consequences that we're facing Joe Biden in every battleground state for the last year. I think that I agree with you that Joe Biden was not fit for office. This is something that Julian Castro brought up all the way back in the 2020 in the 2019 debates
Yeah.
for the Democratic primary. So this is not something new. They hit him away for COVID. He was able to slip through. Everyone was it was right on their mind how bad they felt like things were under the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
But again, now we have other things. It's not just foreign policy. I mean, if even if we talk economics, if you look at the roundtables that they're having on national media, and this is something that pretty much anyone who's trying to live right now can see, rent prices are surging, grocery prices are surging. I mean, it's very expensive to live right now, and we're not seeing wages increase commensurate to that. And from my perspective, having someone who's effectively sleepwalking through their term, as Joe Biden was, you get a situation like this. So when everyone's talking about this great accomplishment, and sure, on paper, maybe there's a lot of accomplishments you can say for Joe Biden, I think that the feeling on the ground for most working class Americans, whether they liked Trump as a president or whether they like Biden as a president or whether on paper they like them, the issues that they believe in more, they think back to then and go, well, actually, I was doing better financially then. The same amount of money I'm making bought more groceries and we had more discretionary money, and that's something that's going to be going through people's minds too. It's not
Yeah.
the primary issue for me this cycle. I'm primarily focused on the
2028.
the genocide happening
Oh,
in
yeah, yeah,
Gaza,
yeah,
but
Gaza. Yeah.
and so that's my biggest thing.
So
Now, something I
oh,
want to talk to you about,
yeah, but if I could
sort of
respond to
expand
some of
on.
those points real quick, and then we can go
Sure.
into that. So I'm with you on Gaza. Like I don't fuck with Israel. I'm gonna keep it so real. I think they're a terrorist state. I think they're a rogue state. I think Netanyahu's a monster. And I don't like what the Biden administration has done in terms of Israel. It wouldn't surprise me if Kamala Harris is also a disappointment in terms of Israel. But just relatively speaking, every single president in my lifetime, in your lifetime, likely in most Gen Xers' lifetime, would be a disappointment on Israel. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that as an excuse, but the reality is, if your two options are bad on Israel, then you're gonna get someone that's bad on Israel. And that's an unfortunate situation, but I have heard from some what calculus gets at, and I know that's just one person, right? And I know he's not in the rooms, but relative to some other people around Biden, Kamala is apparently a more moderating force when it comes to those discussions on Israel. Obviously, not enough. but she already called for a ceasefire. So has Biden. Hasn't happened, but also we got to factor in being fair to the Biden administration. They tried to pull some political jujitsu move where they brought up a plan that was discussed in Israel for a peace plan. Said Israel proposed it, so they proposed it as well, and they were doing this thing where they're like, Hamas, you need to accept it. Hamas then accepted it. Israel did not. So I think, for whether it's for cynical or not cynical reasons, the Biden administration would have liked to see the conflict end because politically it's hurting them, you know. But at this moment, it's not just the U.S. Now, the U.S. could take more actions. For example, completely stop selling weapons. That's what I would do if I was in. But, you know, people like me are not in power. So, but I will say, like I said in the Facebook comments, like you've probably heard a lot of other people say, then the message on Israel from the Republicans is simply finish the job, go harder. Biden is too harsh on Israel, you know. So you're not going to get any better alternative from the Republicans. I'm assuming we're going to get worse. That doesn't mean what the Democrats are doing is great. They're doing very bad on Israel. Other foreign policy things, I actually think they're doing pretty good under Biden. So specifically, ending the war in Afghanistan, practically ending the drone war. Not completely. There's still some drone strikes, but you compare that to what Obama and Trump are doing. Biden brought it near zero. And this is going to sound more hawkish, but I support countries being invaded and the underdog, I suppose, supporting Ukraine. Because what Israel's doing is a war of aggression. Or excuse me, Russia's doing, well, what's the difference? What Russia's doing is a war of aggression and it's not okay, and defenders have a right to defend themselves. So, foreign policy-wise, besides the issue of Israel, Biden has been doing kind of fine. When it comes to our alliances compared to Trump, Biden's been fairly stable. Trump was, you know, shitting on our allies while also kissing up to authoritarians, while also pretending like he's going to fight with them, but then he really likes Xi Jinping and so on and so forth. Trump was a mixed bag, but overall you could tell he didn't like our allies. With Biden, he's at least a stabilizing force. Domestically, I believe in the last 2 months, inflation has slowed down to a point where wages are actually rising at a faster pace. Now, obviously, we don't feel that right away, but economic factors like that are slow. And I say this to Republicans when I'm talking to them about the overall the economic state of the country. Compare the state of our country to the state of the world. We are doing better than every other country in the developed world. We're doing better than countries in Asia. We're doing better than even in Canada. You know, that doesn't mean we're perfect, but we got to put it in perspective how the whole world's doing when it comes to specifically inflation. When it comes to other factors, we're actually doing pretty great. The CHIPS Act, good, bring more chips manufacturing to the United States. Not just chips, but we're seeing more manufacturing jobs in general. We're finally seeing onshoring. We've gone past what we lost in COVID. We've gone past the recovery mode, and now we're just growing when it comes to manufacturing jobs. Build Back Better would have been the biggest transformation of the economy since the New Deal, potentially, or at least the Great Society. But of course, conservative Democrats stopped that. The Inflation Reduction Act was a watered down but important piece of legislation. Point is, the economics is slow, but we are seeing significant investments and a shift away from neoliberalism, not completely, but more towards a old school Keynesian sort of focus when it comes to economic policy, at least from Biden, and I see no indication that Biden or that Kamala would not do the same thing. Anyway, you had a question after what you already said, so feel free to ask.
Yeah. And then I'll ask, could you keep your responses like a little more tightly focused and brief so that we can keep this a little bit more back and forth rather than because you just unloaded too many things. There's no way to intelligently respond
I feel that.
to
I
you
just
can't unload
wanted.
50 things and then go, oh, we'll respond to all 50. That's
But the thing
it's
is,
not intellectually
no
honest for you
problem.
to
You,
engage in that kind of a
the only thing
conversation,
is you
dude.
brought up like foreign policy and domestic policy points, so I just wanted to address those two
I
things.
agree,
And
but
yeah,
you just went way too far in my opinion for us to have an
okay,
intelligent
okay.
conversation. So
So
I'm gonna slow you down.
you
I'm
can
gonna go
ask your
back to the
question
top.
though.
I'm gonna go back to the top of what you said. The
Sure.
first argument that I recall you making was Democrats are the lesser evil, if you will. The Republicans are going to be even worse on Gaza than the Democrats, and so
Absolutely. Not just Gaza,
um,
but just overall in every sort of issue, Republicans would be worse.
but back and forth as quick as we can without you going into a 50-minute rant.
Yeah.
You would agree that you want a party where they don't do that, right? Like that's the end goal. The goal is in a representative democracy, especially in a binary political system, for you to have control of at least one side, right?
Yeah, sure. It would be nice.
Okay, and let's dive in just a little bit deeper. Let's talk about AI pact just for a second. Let's talk about the way Israel functions in our political system.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of how exactly to put this. They haven't just infected the Republican Party. Now they're definitely neoconservative. They have far right foreign policy that they're pushing on members of both parties. So the point I'm trying to make is when your opponents, when the people have infected both parties and have created a system where they go to the Democratic candidates and they say the only way for you to win is to sell out to us, to do whatever Israel says, to do whatever AI PAC says, to do whatever the influence says.
Yeah.
The only counterweight that you even have to that, and this is aside from all of the partisan hackery that you just flooded my ears with about the CHIPS Act and all this other great stuff that Biden's done, that's not the conversation.
But that is part of the conversation. But
the
go ahead.
conversation though, the conversation more broadly is can Biden win with the coalition that's behind him right now, with the policies that he has right now?
More Kamala.
And for me, in the grand scheme of history, when we look back on 2024 and 20, 30, 50 years, I think that Joe Biden stepping down and even Kamala Harris losing is the best response. It's a 1968 moment. It's the kind of moment, and that's the point, is that every single cycle you'll sell out to someone. And that's the thing. If I won a nomination and had spent the whole primary trashing you and I was better than the Republicans, you'd go and you'd vote for me. And that's the thing.
If you're objectively better, if there's an objectively better candidate in any situation, whether they like me or not, I'll go ahead and vote for them. I'll always vote for the better of the candidates, because politics isn't an extension of my personality, of who I am.
But you're not voting for the better candidate. You're voting for the better of the two major parties. Like, I'm sure if you wrote it down on paper, you agree with, Cornel West and Jill Stein more than Kamala Harris.
Potentially, yes, yeah. But the thing is, we know they're not going to win.
Hey, in this artificial system that we've all just adopted, where there are these two major parties, I'm going to go ahead and not only permanently and forever lash myself to this bipartisan system.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and vote for whatever candidate they put forth because I view them as the lesser evil. And no matter what you're pushing, no matter what you're trying to push the party to do, you're the kind of voter, you're the kind of volunteer, you're the kind of whatever, you don't even have to listen to you. There's no incentive. If you're not willing to throw the whole thing and let the party lose and to literally say, look, we're going to actively work against you and you're going to lose this cycle. Until you're willing to do that, they have no incentive to listen to you. And I've been where you are.
Look,
I've been where you are, campaigning the partisan. I want blue team to win. I understand what that is, and to say, oh, the CHIPS Act and all this is to say, hey, that there are accomplishments that have been done under Biden and Harris,
significant accomplishments,
that extend beyond what we see. But the reason why I say it doesn't matter is because that's not helping people pay their bills.
Yeah, well, but if we had a conservative in 2020 win, we would be in a much more worse economic situation, much like the rest of the world is, especially in places where they've had conservative governments. But
and also, we're better off than the rest of the world. This isn't logical. I mean, we're the world's sole superpower, so of course we're better off.
No. We're comparing ourselves to other developed countries, how we're handling things like inflation and the post-pandemic economic situation, and we're handling it better than the rest.
That's not a logical way. It doesn't adequately separate America from the pack where America stands economically. Like, there's no other country except for maybe China that compares to America. When you start looking at like cultural influence across the world, the way we've used our military and stuff to sort of have outsized influence, it's kind of hard to deny.
Yeah, I
So
mean
that extra.
we're different from every other country in the world. Every other country is different from every other country, right? But
Right.
compared to other developed economies, the top 10 economies in the world, we are handling the post-pandemic economic situation better than the rest. Inflation specifically. Yes, it is bad. Yes, homes are too expensive. I completely agree with that. That's why in IRL politics, in the local politics scene, I'm the biggest advocate for building more homes, for building affordable housing, for building public housing. You will meet out in the street, right?
Should
But
should Biden have done more
yeah,
to
sure.
address?
But you realize we when Biden tried to do more, build back better. Like I said earlier, would have been the biggest economic transformation since the New Deal. That's not just me saying it. That's a lot of left wing people, a lot of progressives saying that. But he has to work with other politicians that got in his way. Now, that
No, no,
doesn't
stop for a
mean.
minute.
Wait, wait, wait,
So
wait,
when
wait,
we're
wait,
when
wait,
we,
wait. I
you're
want.
not being honest though. You're
Wait,
not being honest.
wait, wait.
Let me call you real quick for
Hold on.
not being honest.
I was responding to some of your other claims. Okay.
Okay.
So, the point you were making about like we need to be able to get our voices heard. We need to be able to say, okay, fuck this party. We're gonna let it die. We're gonna let you lose, right? Now,
Yeah.
I do not hold the belief that the Bernie or Busters or anything were responsible for Hillary Clinton losing. More people that voted for Bernie in the primary voted for Hillary than Hillary voters that voted for Obama, her primary voters.
You're being dishonest. You,
Wait,
you
wait, wait,
can't
wait, wait,
stack this.
wait, 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 wait,
You,
wait. Hold on. Point is, I'm trying to say Bernie or Busters did not cause the election for Hillary. Hillary did. Hillary didn't campaign. Hillary was in a populist moment. Donald Trump got to do his fake populism because he was never tested and governed. So he was able to be like, I'll bring back the jobs. But he didn't bring back the jobs. And he was able to win. And what happened as a result of him just having 4 years in office? He was able to get thousands of judges appointed. He was able to get three new members in the Supreme Court. Those will last for decades. Okay? Point is, we can't just, oh, the party pisses us off. We're going to throw our hands in the air. We're going to be like, fuck you. We're going to do our own party. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. You guys just lose, 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 lose. Because the other guys are fucking, and I think you would agree with this. Donald Trump is a fascist. The Republican Party is a fascist party, and they're moving towards that. Maybe you think the Democrats are too, but I think that they are notably different in the way they approach the issues that face us. I think the Republicans are so dangerous. And look, I would hold your position if we had a system more like the UK or France, but we don't.
you're just being too long-winded for me to respond to because I mean that you're so many points
You
deep
made
now. Like you
you
first
made a
started off.
long-winded point there too. I'm just trying to address your point. We are not France or the UK. We can't just put our hands up and be like, "Fuck the Democratic Party. We're gonna go do."
I'm pretty sure when this video gets out, you're gonna have talked for like 70 or 80% of this
Okay,
video, dude.
whatever the point is, right? I'm trying to respond to what you're saying. Are we France or the UK? Do we have that political system? Can we just make another party and it will suddenly be a success?
You're making tired points. Like
You're not
I don't know.
responding to my
Like
points.
these are things like there's an innovative discussion we can have here about the specifics of Kamala, or we can have the discussion you're trying to have. These are two different discussions, and I guess it's going to turn into two incredibly long-winded discussions. But let's go
I want
back.
to focus on the point you made. You said that we can just say fuck the party, we leave the party, we let it fail, we get more influence. But at the
Right.
end of the day, that isn't the case. The sort of people that got mad that Bernie lost and they were like Jimmy Dore fans and then they suddenly left the fucking any practical involvement in party politics, they're not influencing Biden. The people influencing Biden throughout his administration, the people that got Build Back Better as a serious proposal as part of the discussion, was the people like Bernie, like AOC, all these motherfuckers, the Justice Democrats, still in willing to play ball, right? But,
But here's my problem: is we're knee deep talking about Build Back Better. Build Back Better, like you have already acknowledged, it never happened.
but
Okay,
Inflation
it
Reduction Act
never
did.
happened. What?
The Inflation Reduction Act did. It was a watered down version of Build Back Better, but
Yeah,
it was still
the
more
Inflation
significant than
Reduction Act.
anything since the Great Society. Tell me any policy more beneficial since the Great Society, since the invention of Medicare and Medicaid. Since that point, what was a bigger deal than the Inflation Reduction Act?
Okay, let me put it like this: when
Yeah.
the Great Society happened in the 1960s, America wasn't on the verge of economic collapse like we were when when Biden finally did the Inflation Reduction. When those types of relief, just the same as when they started issuing stimulus checks, we were at an unprecedented level of of economic despair.
Yes.
And to go back, you're not being honest. So let's just say hypothetically, and I'm not trying to start another 50-minute conversation about, this or that. I'm just trying to say hypothetically to express an idea.
Yes.
Imagine if we go back to 2020,
Okay.
Bernie Sanders had been the nominee, okay?
Great.
And let's imagine Bernie Sanders were president with his level of mental fitness we knew him to have then, we know him to have now. We've seen him on TV. We see he's still basically all there like he was in 2016.
Yeah.
Now, let's say Bernie Sanders is trying to get Build Back Better passed. Don't
Yes.
you think he would be hosting rallies like all across the country, getting thousands of people to show up in support of Build Back Better? In these, especially the key congressional districts, the congressional districts where it's a swing district, they may have a Republican or a Democrat in the seat, but that seat's in danger, and that's where we're gonna stake our claim.
I agree with you that Bernie Sanders would handle that
You're
struggle.
interrupting me. I'm not stop. That's what I'm saying. I'm not even trying to have that conversation. You're
Yeah.
interrupting me for a conversation I'm not
But
trying
I
to have.
don't think the
point I'm trying to
result
have,
would have
though,
been that different.
is Joe Biden was not there mentally, dude. So the
not
moral to
defending
what
Joe
I'm getting
Biden's
at,
mental state. What are you talking about? I started this conversation by saying it was a good thing that he dropped out.
right? I understand that, but you're trying to talk about the accomplishments of Build Back Better, and it only failed because of conservative Democrats. No, that's not entirely true. We didn't have a competent president sitting at the bully pulpit to push Build Back Better
Okay, but
forward.
do you
and
think
you're
if
right, the
Biden went to
AOC
West Virginia, that he would have been, I don't know, and he did like some rallies in West Virginia, that he would have changed the mind of Joe Manchin? Do you think if he did that in Arizona, that he would have changed the mind of Kristen Sinema? Because both Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema left the Democratic Party even without that. Point is, they're not really movable. They are sellouts completely. They are not into helping people.
So what you're saying is their willingness to let the whole thing fall apart allow them to take the party hostage, if you will.
Yes,
and to
they
dictate
they absolutely did take the party hostage.
You're saying that it's okay for them to do that from the right, and that's
It's not okay. I don't fuck with them at all.
Okay or not okay, but you're more harshly, in my opinion, condemning people doing the exact same thing on the left, which is basically our strategy over here.
No.
Okay, if you do
Joe
that, you're gonna
Manchin
lose.
and Kristen Sinema are the worst of the worst. The thing is, they
Okay.
have power. The people that you're describing on the left that are like, look, listen, like, there is so much energy I've seen from left-wing people for Kamala, from the politicians to the activists. There's a reason why there has been over 120 million or so donations through Act Blue, not through the yes, there are super PACs donating, but individual contributions. These are the same people that this is the same system which Bernie got his $27.
Okay, it's the same website. I mean, I don't understand that's the thing, dude. You get so
No,
intellectually dishonest.
Wait. Here. Let me elaborate. Okay, I'm making this point.
You're elaborating on some dumb stuff that doesn't really matter to the conversation. Like, who cares?
Wait, hold
She's
on,
gonna
bro.
lose.
Hold on.
What do those numbers even matter?
Hold on,
bro.
Behind Trump. Hold on, bro. Okay, listen.
Like, if she's gonna lose to Trump in a majority of swing states, what does that matter?
So, does it not matter to you, or is it not significant to you, that the moment she becomes a presidential nominee, you have like the biggest day of presidential fundraising potentially in history, as far as I know, definitely since the 2020 cycle?
I don't think that money means what you think it does.
Yeah.
In fact,
yeah.
Joe Biden and
I'm curious what you think what do you think I mean? What do you think I'm
Dude,
meaning? And I can tell you what I'm meaning when I say it. So what is your interpretation of what I'm saying when I say it's a big deal that $100 million was donated to Kamala Harris by the voters, by regular people? What do you think I mean?
You're trying to say that it symbolizes that there's energy behind her campaign, which is bullshit. It's artificially manufactured. In fact, they spent 4 days getting everything in line for everyone to rally behind her as soon as they made it official. That's why everyone in the know was posting 4 days ago that Joe Biden was going to drop out, and then he officially did. I think it was on the 18th, and then 4 days later, they finally... my thing's doing stupid reactions.
Yeah, I saw like a thumbs up. I don't know what that was. No, I disagree with the notion that it's just exclusively artificial energy. Yes, there was planning that Joe Biden was going to drop out and planning that Kamala was going to be the nominee, but that doesn't translate to regular people than putting the money where their mouth is and creating the biggest day of fundraising since fucking
Yes, it does,
Ruth
dude. You're
Bader
acting like they
Ginsburg
didn't text
fucking
everyone
died.
and call everyone and email everyone all at the same time. That's the thing. You're acting like everyone was so excited they just hopped on KamalaHarris.com. No, these
Bro,
people were
dude,
called and texted, and not even called and texted by humans, called and texted by robots because they can't get volunteers. How about this? Why don't you
brother,
go to the Florida Democratic?
brother,
Why don't you go to the Florida Democratic
brother.
Party Twitter page where they're asking for volunteers and got like 100 likes on the
How
post?
about how about this? How about this? How about there was a call, a Zoom call. Frankly, you see live streams with these numbers of the biggest streamers in the world. There was a Zoom call with 40,000 activists and organizers, yes, Democratic Party leaning, that came together and raised at least $1 million in like 3 hours,
And you
right?
know what? And here's an honest question. How many of those people do you think weren't already 100% down for Joe Biden? For every single stupid reason you've given why, oh,
Oh
we've got to
yeah,
vote for
bro. I don't
Kamala,
think
the
I
Supreme
think a
Court.
lot of them
How, no,
weren't
no,
down for
honest
Joe
question.
Biden. I think a lot of them
What?
weren't. There was a tremendous amount of activists,
That's absurd.
small money and big money donors that weren't into Joe Biden, especially after the debate performance. The point is,
That's
there's
not
a
what I'm talking
surge of
about. That's not what
adrenaline.
I'm talking about. I'm talking about who was going to
Hey,
vote for Biden no
hey.
matter who. I'm talking about out of those 40,000, who was going to go to the poll on election, look at their options and go, yep, it's Joe Biden. All of them.
I feel like you as an organizer should understand this, that it's not like politics is not just exclusively I'm going to knock on that random house door specifically. It is also let me rally the troops. Let me get the base ready to put in the work, whether it's donating, whether it's volunteering, and so on and so forth. So what we're seeing right now is the base energized that they have a candidate that can speak again. What we're seeing right now is even further left people excitedly talking about potential VP picks. You
So
understand?
just when we're using like explicit examples, because I mean I hear you broadly saying the left this or that. That's not my impression. I mean, as an organizer, as you say, like I'm pretty well, in the know on what organizers lefties are doing, and I would even agree with you that a majority of people that I know that I've worked with in the past or with you, believing that Kamala Harris. In fact, I would say that our movement of the activist core, like of the people who volunteered for Bernie Sanders, for example, we're 20, maybe 25%, and 75% are voting for Kamala Harris. But the thing you don't seem to understand is that we only need like 1, maybe 2%. You know what I'm saying? To totally destroy a swing state. That's the thing that you're working in a system where you need a plurality, hopefully 50% plus one, but more likely like 48, 49%, and the person other just getting slightly less 40 something
Yeah.
percent. That's the numbers you're working with. But when you're working with the numbers I'm working with, from my perspective, not only is it only 1 or 2% of the voters maybe going and voting third party or whatever, the thing about where you're organizing from my perspective, the people who don't vote are in my column too. Like that's the thing is like people who don't vote count for nothing for you. The
No,
people
no,
who
that's
stay
not
home
true at all. I think you misinterpreted what I said earlier. I'm saying it isn't like activism, organizing, politics isn't exclusively like the most exciting things, the rhetorically, uh, like I said, exciting things. It's also making sure you have those people that are more committed, making sure that they're excited because those are the people that donate. Those people that donate will vote. Those people
right.
that
But again,
donate
I
will
think
volunteer.
I
Those people can't be ignored. You can't ignore a sudden jump of $120 million in like 2 fucking days. That's
I,
impossible to
I'm
ignore.
not. I'm
Trump
not.
doesn't have
That's
those
the thing. Though,
numbers.
You're debating a completely different point, though, and maybe you understand, and maybe you don't. But the point I'm trying to get to you is, even if you have that groundswell, even if you have the basis support, as you put it, and even if you have this giant swell of support, there are still so many disaffected Democratic voters, people who the Democratic Party needs in their coalition to stand a chance at winning, who are not, at least not right now, convinced to vote for Kamala Harris, and many of them never will be. Okay. So we can
I'm
say
sure
we
there are
accept
some
it.
people that aren't. I've met disaffected voters as well, right? That's not a rare thing. But in politics, you can't just. The thing is, when you. For the folks that are just like, I am exclusive. Like, we talked about bubbles earlier. I think, and I'm not saying this to like call you out, I think you are in a bubble of your own. You know what I mean? You're around people
No,
that
of
are
course.
around you.
I'm
Naturally,
definitely in
that's
an
the
echo
case with
chamber, but
everybody. But that's okay with that's the case with everybody, right? When you go to like fucking apolitical normies, like the not the most political people, those are the people that when people are like, oh, we gotta win over these undecided voters. Not like I can't as a political person comprehend being undecided. I made my decision a million years ago, but there's a lot of people that simply don't pay attention to the shit. They don't care
Right,
about
and
the
that
shit,
that also
and
makes you
those
that also makes
people are the people that will likely vote Democratic because suddenly our Democratic candidate is a person that can speak, and the Republican candidate is still a felon who has a vice president that called him literally Hitler in 2016, right? So it's not like Donald Trump is in the strongest position either. He's politically toxic. We've seen that in every single election since 2016. His brand has hurt the Republican Party. I'm not saying it's a shoo-in for Kamala Harris, but I'm saying there is a lot of excitement in Democrats, not just for Kamala, but, oh, who's her VP going to be? Is it going to be Andy Beshear? Is it going to be Gretchen Whitmer? Is it going to be J.B. Pritzker? And maybe those names don't excite you in your circle, and that's fine. That's normal. But there are people in circles that are not usually excited about Democratic politics eagerly talking suddenly about Andy Beshear. You know? So this wouldn't happen under Biden. It's happening under
No, they're
Kamala.
not.
And
No, they're
that's
not.
significant.
No, they're not. Nobody who is not. This is, and again, dude, you must have brainworms. You were right that
I
yes,
think you're
I
projecting a little bit there,
99%.
but go ahead.
Let me, Jesus Christ, dude, you don't even let me talk. Like I'm not gonna
I've
do
let you
this with
talk a
you. And
lot.
then if
Go
you let
ahead.
me, well, I mean, you just run
This
on
stuff
forever.
is
You
good.
said 90% of what you were just saying is how excitement there was for Kamala Harris. If I play back the 5 minutes you said before it, half of it was the same damn thing. I mean, dude, advance the conversation. So here's what I'm trying to explain though. That doesn't matter. You first of all, nobody who is not already
Dude,
deep in Democratic politics is talking about who the vice president candidate's going to
That's
be.
not
That is
true.
absolutely
That is
delusional.
not
It is
true.
absolutely delusional. It is
That is
people who
not
already
true,
cared about
brother.
this. No one who just didn't care is talking about it. That's just absurd. I'm sorry. It may be the people who are tuned out because Biden, but here's the, how
No,
old are you? I mean,
I'm saying there
clearly,
are communities that are left wing communities, right? That are not necessarily Democratic Party loyal communities, right? But now they are talking about
oh
how
yeah, well yeah,
uh,
but those are political. Those are politicos. Those are people who are
no, those are the
embedded in the
people.
political
They're
system.
like the
You
Hassan
can't
Piker
you can't
fans. You know
talk
what I'm
about
saying?
those.
The
But you're
socialists
saying
that you care
this is the
about, that are
thing.
like
Are we
you.
talking about socialists or are we talking about normies, dude? Are we talking about
I'm
socialists or are we
talking
talking about
about
normies?
so here. Let me specify. So normies are moved by the fact that this candidate can speak and doesn't have 30 something felonies. The more political people that might be more likely to be disaffected by establishment politics generally are suddenly paying a bit more attention, and are somewhat interested, maybe even
No,
excited about the
no one
prospect
cares.
of having an Andy Beshear as the vice president. Because some
It's going to
people
be
care
Shapiro.
about the
First of all,
labor
it's going to be
movement.
Shapiro. It's going to be Shapiro. I just want to go ahead and mark that right now. It's going to be Shapiro. It's going to piss off
Well, there's a
all
lot of
the
discussion, so we don't know. There's some people that like Shapiro too, though, so it's not gonna.
no,
I
it's,
feel
it's
like
going to be Shapiro, and it's going to piss off all the people who are already pissed off about Gaza, and she's not going to win. So mark my words. We can play this clip back in November. It's going to be
I think if
Shapiro.
it's Shapiro,
She's
people
going to
will still be
lose.
fine with
And when
that.
they're doing the autopsy and deciding what the fuck happened here, they're going to realize that it was young voters, the ones on campus who are protesting, and it was especially Muslims and other people of color who didn't show up. Now you
Here,
bring up the interesting thing about the felon.
yeah,
Normies don't care that Trump is a felon.
they
They don't
absolutely
care.
do. I don't know what you're talking about there. That's a big fucking deal, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Then why didn't he drop in the polls after the conviction?
Because Biden has dementia, dude. And also, they're both doing shit in the polls. Okay, Biden was doing shit in the polls. Trump was doing shit in the polls. Okay,
Why
but
didn't he drop in the hypothetical polls against Kamala or the hypothetical polls against Gavin Newsom? You're saying, oh, Biden has dementia, but it
listen,
wasn't just the Trump v. Biden polls
the
that Trump was holding strong in after all that.
the current
It,
situation is tight. If I recall, there was a bit of a drop in the polls for, um, excuse me, for Trump after the conviction. A
he
little
was
bit of a
still winning
rise in the
every
polls,
battleground state.
but when the
He was still,
when the debate happened, it sort of just kind of went back to the status quo. Point is, people aren't satisfied with the candidates. I absolutely get that. So when you have Trump and Biden, obviously not outsider, but the opposition party is going to be excited about getting rid of Biden. But again, you have a guy
right.
with 30 something felonies and a guy with potentially dementia, both polling like shit. Okay, now you have somebody that can speak, which I think is going to make a big deal on election day, and you have somebody with 30 something felonies. Yes, that's a big deal. You can't ignore that. The independent swing voter that is always idolized, I think it'll make a big impact if their president has a bunch of felonies for business crimes, a civil liability for sexual assault, and so on and so forth. Trump, and also, even without that shit, like I said before, Trump's brand is toxic. But I do think this is important to touch on. You are a little too casual about just like, yeah, we could just let the Democratic Party lose and Trump get power. That's fucking insane, dude. That's fucking
You know, people
insane.
said that in 2016. That's what people said in 2016. We would
And what
never have an
happened in
election again.
2016, bro? What
People,
happened after
people,
2016,
people,
bro?
people. Well, did we have an election again?
Yeah.
Everyone told me in 2016 that was the last election of our lifetime. We would never get a chance to vote again. I've actually heard that many times this time too.
What else happened after 2016?
We would never get a chance to vote again if I
What
voted for
else
Jill
happened
Stein.
after
If Trump won.
2016?
What?
What happened after
Trump
2016?
governed mostly as a normal Republican. Like, let's be totally honest.
Sure, he did things
Like,
like
on
tax
paper-
cuts. Sure, he did things like raise the military budget spending. But he was also able to get 3 Supreme Court justices. Governing like a normal Republican is governing in an anti-democratic, small d-democratic, not democratic party, but democracy, an anti-democratic way. The Republican Party is still the party that super duper loves gerrymandering. The Republican Party is the party of Project 2025.
Are you really going there when we didn't even have a primary?
And well, we did
The
have a
only
primary.
candidate,
We did
the
have a
only
primary.
candidate who was
Marianne Williamson
democratically
lost.
elected
I don't know what to tell you, brother. But hold on, bro. Hold on, bro. Hold on. What also happened as a result of Trump getting 3 Supreme Court picks? What happened?
Well, you're gonna try to put Roe v. Wade on the people who let Trump win, and not the Democrats who tried to put a losing candidate. Why did the Democrats nominate?
What did I say earlier
why
about
did
2016? It is
Why did
Hillary's
the
fault that she lost. But because she lost and the Republicans were in power and Trump was in power, they were able to get 3 Supreme Court justices in, and those Supreme Court justices were able to get rid of Roe v. Wade, and we're going to be stuck with a lot of those Supreme Court justices unless we see some Supreme Court reform, which obviously the Republicans aren't going to do because it's favorable for them. Point is, elections have super big consequences, okay? And now we're seeing a much more organized Republican Party around Trump. We have Project 2025, which is not just a Trump thing. It is a takeover of our government. It is trying to fire thousands upon thousands of apolitical, civil servants and trying to make them exclusively executive appointees. So super duper political. It is trying to make the conditions which a January 6th would have succeeded. Okay? You can't, and also, fucking January 6th happened. The former president tried to overthrow a free and fair election. They pushed that nonsense line that it was stolen. Like, this is big deal. This is unprecedented. Yes, when Trump's in office, he does massive, irresponsible tax cuts, which aren't good for the economy as well. But he also is fulfilling or trying to fulfill the Republican goal of trying to make this a right-wing authoritarian theocracy. You know what I'm saying? Like, that can't be ignored. And also, if you want, like, I don't know, again, you said you're in activist circles. I know a lot of trans people. I know a lot of racial minorities that would be fucked in a in a Trump administration, dude. Like, they would not be in favor of that. And I think the whole analysis of, yeah, we could just let Trump win. Just let the Democratic Party burn, let Trump win, is a super irresponsible position. Okay. And I would accept it if we had a system like France. I would. But we don't.
Okay, give me a second. I don't even know that. I don't know if it's you're afraid of every point individually being systematically dismantled.
Well, you're making a lot of points too, bro. I have to respond to a bunch of your points. What are you talking about? You keep going back to that.
This is why I critiqued you when you first did it, because I was sort of trying to make a more succinct issue of why the Biden-Harris ticket wasn't going to win, like sort of making the idea of the foreign policy and making the idea of the economic policy. And now you're like, oh, Project 25, oh, CHIPS Act, oh, Build Back Better. And I mean, like, dude, we're both too intelligent to have that level of conversation.
Bro, you started this conversation by bringing up, yes, Gaza, which is a fair thing to bring up, but then you bring up, oh, the whole economic situation is bad. This prices and this prices and this prices. So I responded to multiple of your points. We're both responding to multiple points and making multiple points.
The CHIPS Act has nothing to do with the groceries, okay? And that's sort of why I'm frustrated with you.
And it's one of the reasons why we're doing better than the rest of the world.
Can I talk for a minute or not? I mean, Jesus Christ,
I have let you talk for many minutes. Go ahead.
Dude, I can't wait until this video is played back. I'm gonna watch it back and I'm gonna count. I'm gonna literally take a document of how many minutes you've talked, how many minutes I've talked, and more importantly, how many minutes I've tried to talk and you've just outright every time it's literally you've acknowledged, hey, it's your turn to talk, and you just started talking over me and just took over. And you've done that literally 4 or 5 times now. And again, it's being recorded as you
I
say.
think we're both
Um,
yappers, but we're both doing a
and we,
similar thing. You're just complaining
well,
about it.
we might be doing it, but the point is, I've been gone on for like 6 or 7 minutes. I may go on for like 2 or 3, and then I give the floor back to you. You go on for like 6 or 7 minutes, and you're so far deep in something else that there's no way to intelligently respond to everything. Like you just brought up Project 25 and the
It's a
Supreme
big
Court
deal.
justice and trans people and people of color.
It's
How
a
the fuck do I
big
respond to all
deal.
that in one go? Honestly. Now, okay, so let me try. Project 2025. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care. That's the
Okay.
same thing the Republicans have always. That's the same thing the Republicans have always been trying to do. I mean, I don't understand what that's Project for a New American Millennium. What are you talking about? This is what they've always been trying to do. And not only that, this is the exact same kind of fear mongering the Democrats used in 1999 and 2000 to talk about Bush. And hey, it's not that what they wanted to do wasn't scary. It's that the way y'all are messaging it is hopelessly desperate, and
And
people
Bush
don't
was a
care.
disaster of a president. I don't know what to tell you.
No, he was, but he won. Al Gore
Yeah.
lost. You already tried this
And
messaging,
we have
and
a
it
different
lost. And
electorate
it's
than
not
2000.
most. What?
We have a very different electorate than 2000.
Right. In a lot of ways, things are worse. For example, in 2000, assault weapons were banned on the federal level. For example,
I'm
that's
saying
something
the
that Biden,
electorate.
something
I'm
very
saying the
important
electorate.
to
So if
Biden and Harris. So I'm just trying to make a point that hey, even when they banned assault weapons in the 90s, there was no wide opposition. There weren't people marching in the streets with AR-15s. So yeah, the electorate's very different. In my opinion, it's a lot more conservative in a lot of ways.
oh, I completely disagree with that.
And then we can agree to disagree. I mean, dude, you can
Sure.
look at the electoral map and see that. I mean, if you look at where the Democrats were in 2008 when Obama won, the states we were winning then compared to the states now, we had a Democratic Senate seat in Louisiana in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
That's unthinkable now. You can't even. That's impossible.
Yes, the Deep
The
South
fact
is
testers
hard to
held on
win
in
in.
Montana is a miracle. What?
The Deep
I'm
South
sorry.
is quite hard for Democrats to win in. That's
And actually, yeah, and let's have that conversation. We're not just having this conversation about Kamala versus Joe or whatever. This is in the context of being Democratic activists in Florida. We're the
yeah,
party in the state that our party's in. So
yeah.
let's talk about that for a second and sort of see if that changes the way you feel. I
Mm-hmm.
know you're younger than me, but just to be clear, I'm 31. I was born in 1992. How old are you?
I'm 23.
So you're 23. So what was the first cycle you voted in?
2020, but I was paying attention beforehand.
Right, and I'm actually really about to get into that. So I'm super fucking happy you said that. So you started voting in 2020, but you started paying attention in 2016, right? Or
Yeah,
maybe even
a
before
bit
that.
before that. Yeah.
But by 2016, you were already paying attention, right?
Yes, of course.
So my first election was 2010,
Yeah.
and I want you to also understand that I live in an incredibly rural area. It's incredibly red. But I flipped my county blue for multiple different candidates. I did it for Alex Sink in 2010 during a red wave year. We won the county by 4 votes. I did it 2 years later for Bill Nelson when he was running for Senate. We won the county literally by 1 vote. And we didn't just work in my county and win in my county. We did it in a neighboring rural county called Liberty that's actually the least populous county in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't want to sit here and act like that's like the end all be all, like someone who can flip a rural county can flip the whole state because obviously urban and suburban organizing is much, much different than what we do out here. But what I will say is that what I was able to do in 2010, which was a historic red wave year, it was the Tea Party year, it was the backlash to Obama year. We were
Yeah.
still able to flip this county blue and a neighboring county blue. And if more organizers were doing the kind of on the ground type of organizing that I've not necessarily doing right now, but I've done in the past, the
Yeah.
Democratic Party would do a lot better. And if we were delivering a message of hope and economic prosperity and all that stuff, an Andrew Gillum style message,
Yeah.
we do a lot better. And we can dig into that a little bit deeper if you want to. In fact, maybe that might be a conversation more so than Biden Harris's accomplishment. How we get out of the mess we're in Florida might be a conversation I'd listen to you droll on for a long time because I actually am really interested in what you have to say on that. But the moral to what I'm getting at is that for me, a lot of what I'm doing is with the understanding that Florida's already a red state, dude. That
Yeah.
99%, but it's not just that Florida's a red state. I mean, as I've told you, I'm actively working on the ground in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia with people there where it really does matter. And I have been, because those are the issue, those are the places where our Palestine organizing matters most,
Yeah.
and most importantly, where we can affect legislative seats. Because if it's a swing state for the presidential race, it's also likely a swing state in the Senate races, and a lot of the House districts are probably competitive as well. So those are the states that we chose to target back in December when we were contacting the Senate Foreign Relations Committee Dems about Gaza. And you have to understand that when it comes to voting for Biden specifically, we decided, hey, we're not voting for Biden like months ago. Like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the Macklemore song by now, Heinz Hall, about the protests on campus. And one of the lines is that "fuck no, I'm not voting for you in the fall," referring to Biden.
Uh huh.
So I mean that it kind of gets there's a larger in that specific movement. And I agree, it's an echo chamber. It's a small segment of the population that is that passionately involved in that. But I also believe it's more than enough to throw an election. And we could talk about the ethics of throwing an election, but for me, that conversation isn't even really relevant because Florida's already a red state. You know, Florida's not only a red
Yeah.
state, it's a red state on a persistent trajectory to failure.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
So
So
from
to respond to some of
so
that,
from my perspective, there's a totally different angle. One second. There's a totally different angle for me of destabilizing the leadership of Florida Democratic Party and making it clear that if these are the people who are in control and you continue to allow them to be the people in control, we're going to continue to suffer losses like this. And in regard to Florida specifically with the rigged primary, for example, we lost a whole bunch of municipal elections on 319 when Democrats didn't
yeah,
show up in that primary. And
yeah,
also, the Republicans were working to get vote by mail ballots signed up for this year during that cycle when Democrats weren't. And so it was a multi-tier failure. Not only that, there's a million active voter disadvantage for Democrats in Florida that
yeah,
was literally caused by people not showing up that day because
yeah.
850,000 more Republicans showed up on that day than Democrats. So when we're dealing with situations like this where people way above our head are already losing the election for us, I mean, even if I just sat at home and didn't pay any, in fact, I don't really organize in Florida. I'm so sure they're going to lose. I'm organizing in the battleground states and I'm just letting Nikki lose it here in Florida. So a lot of this for me, not just in Florida, but making sure that it's the movement they know exists is working this all over. And you may say, oh, y'all aren't doing shit. But like, trust me, the senators in these states, they know who we are. The congressmen in these states, they know who we are by name. They know who our Twitter accounts are. They know what we're doing. Um, so I mean, that's a different angle for me. Is that and I want to say one more thing. I'm sorry, I know I got onto you for going long-winded. I'll let you go for as long as you want on this if you want to talk about Florida. I worked really hard to get Maxwell Frost elected. I was by no means like the biggest volunteer.
Yeah.
Um, but I worked hard and he sold out. He took the $970,000 and then some of the movement went with him and then some of the movement continued to protest him. But the moral to what I'm getting there is it kind of shook my faith in even if you take someone from our movement, someone who supported Bernie, someone who supports all our issues and puts them in Congress, they still might betray you for $1 million. And so when that exists, everything is looked at a little bit different. And you can talk about how you feel about that, and we can go deeper in that. And I want to say one more thing. Um, in 2006, my first election was 2010. In 2006, everyone was like, "Oh my God, we got to stop Charlie Crist. We got to stop Charlie Crist." That's what the mantra was. 2006. Charlie Crist is this great danger to us. We've got to get him out of office.
Yeah.
So that's my problem. Is that if that was the motto in 2006,
Oh,
then in
you're
2014 and 2020 nominee, things are messed up. I said if he becomes the nominee in 2014 and 2022 after he was the guy we had to defeat in 2006, something really wrong is going on. Like imagine you said you started paying attention in 2016. So imagine if Donald Trump, he lives in Florida now. Imagine if Florida Democrats were like, you know what, things are so bad, we're gonna run Trump for governor of Florida. You know what? Imagine the DeSantis crowd gets so powerful in Florida. It's great. Imagine a bunch of DeSantis supporters who don't really like Trump
yeah.
are just in control of Florida. And the Democrats are like, you know what? Our last hope is to run Trump as governor of Florida because you know what? Him and DeSantis don't get along. Would you support Trump? Would that be like, that's what I'm saying. That's the drain we're circling. And to you, that seems
Here,
insane.
here.
You're like, oh,
Let me make some responses, and
Trump's this evil
then
guy. There's everyone said about Charlie Crist.
here. Let me
Here.
make some responses, and we're probably gonna end soon because I got some stuff to do. But I guess to address your points specifically about Florida, yeah, I think it's pretty fucking dumb for us to have Charlie Crist as our nominee. Admittedly, Nikki Fried didn't provide much of an alternative. Charlie Crist, politically speaking, did better. on regarding reaching across the aisle to conservative Democrats and to more progressive Democrats. That's just objective political analysis about 2022. Regarding to, like the 2010s with Charlie Crist, um, I can't speak for the Florida Democratic Party at the time. I was not involved. I assume this party is a mess for a long time. Okay, they haven't set us up for victory. We had a good model of a potentially successful campaign with Andrew Gillum, but it didn't happen, and we went back to our old ways. And as far as I know, in the grand scheme of things, the Democratic Party hasn't done enough in Florida to really reverse that or provide an alternative message. Meanwhile, DeSantis, the monster that he is, somehow excites Republicans because it's a very radical party, I suppose. Again, you mentioned the battleground states. Palestine is a super important issue. What we're doing is monstrous. I don't deny that at all. I've seen how people feel about it. I've seen people get feeling disenfranchised because of it. But at the end of the day, again, if there's a better politician than the other guy, if the other guy is guaranteed to do worse domestically, foreign policy, specifically with Gaza as well, I'm going to vote for the lesser of two evils. In terms of domestic policy, Biden, and he's not our candidate anymore, but he's not just the lesser of two evils against Trump. I think in turn, Kamala will also do a similar, if not better, economic policy, meaning that she will be objectively good relative to modern presidencies. So I'm going to vote for her. Um, Whether or not, again, you made a lot of points, so I'm trying to keep track of a lot of them.
Yeah, no, no. That time it was me, dude. I know.
Yeah. So again, trying to follow. Uh, Going back to Florida, what can we do to win in Florida? We need an alternative. I think if we could have more politicians like Andrew Gillum, if we could have more politicians like Anna Eskamani, and I know there's criticism of Maxwell Frost, but I don't see Maxwell Frost in the way he's governed as the most like he's been more willing to call out Israel than most. Okay, which might not be ideal. He could be better.
What does
But
what
but
does what
but the
can I
point.
can I ask you
Wait, wait.
can I ask you just real quick?
The
Can I
point.
ask you a question about that?
Yeah. What's up?
Okay, I don't interrupt you and make another point. Um, so how do you feel about the protesters who like disrupted Maxwell's Mad Soul Fest? How do you feel about like folks like me, the most radical Palestine protesters who will even attack the people like you say who have been better than most?
Well,
Like
I can't speak on
you
the
know,
specifics of Maxwell's event because I'm not aware of it. I'm okay with people protesting Democrats. That's fine. If it were me making a decision on who to protest, I'd probably be more willing to protest someone like John Fetterman, right? Uh,
are you familiar with the protester arrested at the convention for protesting Fetterman?
at which convention?
So if you watch the video on my Twitter account that's pinned on my old Game Bobby account, you'll see there's a video about Maxwell Frost, and there's like a thread that goes on for a while. But it kind of explains how Maxwell Frost betrayed us. But the key person he betrayed was someone named Rasha Mubarak. And
Mm-hmm.
Rasha Mubarak was actually arrested 2 years later on May the 4th at Disney at the Democratic Party State Convention protesting John Fetterman while he was speaking. And that's actually one of the biggest contentions between, and that this is something you should understand. So maybe you should be talking to Nikki and them about it.
Well, I don't
Just,
speak
you
to
know,
Nikki. I'm not close to them at all.
well, I'm just saying.
But
I mean your faction, because this is if y'all want any chance of the folks on our side to come around by November to vote for
well,
Kamala, which I think is very very slim anyways.
I
Y'all
don't
arrested.
really think that Democrats are going to do well in Florida in November. If I was running the Democratic Party campaign, I would focus on states that are a bit more winnable: the Midwest, Arizona, Nevada, even throw in North Carolina in there because the Republicans put up a psycho that like says women shouldn't have the right to vote. So put a little bit more priority in North Carolina, I suppose.
I agree with you.
Um,
That's where we've been too. Against that's where
yeah,
I agree with that assessment. That's where we've been as well for the very same reasons.
yeah. So that's those are the best places to focus on. Again, I can't speak on every single thing with Maxwell Frost because I didn't follow every single thing he's done. I know in the initial 2022 controversy, right? My understanding of that was that he mentioned BDS and pro-Palestine movements more during the primary, but before the
But not only
primary,
that, he
before
was a
the
Palestine
primary,
protester. He marched with them for years.
yeah, marched with them for years, and then he kind of shut up about them. He didn't necessarily attack them. He just shut up about them, and I'm just gonna be
Well,
honest with you.
he also released a position paper that
Well, it supported the two-state
basically
solution. It support
said he was
that
a
I
Zionist.
believe in 2022 he publicly supported the two-state solution, which is pretty much what every other person progressive
It's
supports.
not. See, that's
So
not fair. It's not just that he supported the two-state solution. It's that he also said that aid to Israel is the most important aid that we provide, and a bunch of other things too. So I mean, it's not just the two-state solution. He said that
I
the
can't speak on
BDS.
that letter. We're having a conversation about something I'm not fully informed in. But the main thing I'm saying about 2022, my understanding was that he essentially shut up on the issue, said he supported the two-state solution, said some rhetoric or put out a letter, and that potentially prevented APAC from pouring in a bunch of money into that race when it was a competitive primary, when there was a bunch of more established Democrats, not established in terms of like establishment, but like more like people that have been around for a real long time. So if I think in 2022 we had just seen APAC throw a bunch of money into sinking Nina Turner's campaign, so I think he simply wanted to avoid that. I can't again, but let's move on beyond Maxwell because I can't speak on every Maxwell thing. I'm
Can
just
I say just
explaining
one
my.
thing?
I just
It wasn't actually mostly APAC that sunk the campaign
for Nina
for
Turner.
Nina Turner. It was mostly a PAC called Protect Our Future that was funded by a billionaire called Sam Bankman-Fried,
Oh
who
yeah
has
yeah
since
yeah
been
yeah yeah.
arrested on federal charges for a bunch of fraudulent behavior working for a crypto exchange called FTX. But what
Yeah.
has to be understood is that's also the exact same PAC that gave Maxwell Frost $970,000. So the
Yeah.
same exact PAC that took down Nina
Well,
Turner
okay,
is the one
okay.
that
So
funded
okay.
Max.
Thank you for that clarification because I think I remember you mentioning that, but I didn't know that was a pro-Israel pack or just like a general like Democrat pro-crypto
Not registered. It's
pro-Sam
not
Bankman-Fried.
registered as a. It's not legally. It should be registered as it's acting on behalf of a
I have
foreign
to go
entity.
soon, so I'm gonna make some final statements. Anyway, overall,
Sure.
I think if I'm not gonna lie, if in 2022 when the circumstance was a little different, if Maxwell just kind of like shut up on the issue a little bit to avoid potentially APAC money, I'm not gonna fully blame him. You know, part of getting
Well,
it.
that's not a really.
But
That's
but
not the
but wait
most
wait
fair
wait 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 wait
assessment
wait
of
wait.
it.
Let me continue. Just going over about strategy overall. Going back to the bigger picture with Kamala and Trump, I think there is energy behind Kamala. I think that's undeniable. The base is
It's
donating. The
artificial.
base is excited. People are excited, whether it's because of her or more likely because we don't have a senile person at the top of our ticket. People are curious who the vice president's going to be. It could we have a lot of great choices for vice president that could
That's
potentially help
also
the
messed up.
campaign. Meanwhile, you compare that to Trump, who put a loser like J.D. Vance, who's already been campaigning and he's awkward as fuck. So I don't think he's going to be helpful that campaign. Trump is also has a lot of baggage, not just his personality, not just his political views, not just his toxic brand, but now he has the felonies, and he also just doesn't have the same sauce that he had in like 2016. And I think we can all agree with that. He's just not as funny anymore. He gave a horrible speech at the RNC, and it was a disaster. I'm not saying Democrats are guaranteed to win. I'm saying that they have a path to win. If they lock in, if they focus, they can win. I'm saying that the base wants them to win, the base of the Democratic Party, and they're putting the money where their mouth is. And Elon Musk promised to donate $45 million a month. That would make like 100 or that would make 100 something million in 4 months leading up to the election. The individual contributions already put 120 million yesterday. So that's not the end all be all, but more obviously more money is going to come for both candidates. Point is this: uh, Kamala has a chance. Frankly, not even a bad chance, a good chance, because her opponent is also a really shitty opponent. Is a really shitty candidate. Not saying it's guaranteed, but he's not in a good position. And Kamala is also the better option. She will do more good things. I think we have a difference in our perspective on the achievements of the Biden administration. I feel like you're kind of ignoring him. You feel like I'm giving him too much credit. That's okay. We can leave it at that because we gotta go soon. Um, but at the end of the day, Kamala's gonna be the nominee. I think Trump is an existential threat. You disagree with that, and I'm not saying this to like shun you. I'm just saying this is basically what you said. You're potentially okay with another Trump administration because the Democratic Party is ass. Am I yes or no? Am I right on that? Just like a quick one since we're ending.
I think that's a painful oversimplification. I think you would be an excellent MSNBC anchor or even just guest speaker. Like you're good at rambling off the vote blue, no matter who the policy achievements, if you will, of the Biden
I don't
administration that
think
people
it's
can't
so
get on the
much
ground.
of a MSNBC thing, but more of a
But
Chomsky sort of perspective that voting is like the
I'll tell
bare
you this.
minimum. But
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. This is my take. I hope we have future conversations, especially after November when Kamala loses, and I hope we have future conversations about how you, basically, in just the shortest point possible, nothing you said in this call is going to convince anyone who wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden to vote for Kamala Harris, and that's something to just work on, to think about. I know you're
But I
political.
mean,
You
I
think
could say
about
the same to you. Your points didn't really convince me. I think some of your points were kind of
right,
like
and
wild.
that's the important thing. To my end, to toppling Kamala Harris, and if that's our goal in these battleground states, we don't need to convert you. Like I try to
But
explain on
I
Facebook,
think that's the
it could be
Democrats could
50
say
to
the
1.
same thing. It's not necessarily you they need to convert. That's why.
Right, it's not me
Yeah.
individually. It's not me individually, but there,
But
again, there's a
it's not
deficit.
even the more further left members of our party. It is
Well,
the
then
more
you believe
moderate
that.
people, and also yes, at the end of the day, there
You
will
believe
be
that.
people further left that will vote for Kamala because they agree with my position that Trump is an existential threat. You might disagree with
I
that.
agree.
You might disagree with
I
them,
agree that
but those people
I
absolutely
disagree with
exist.
I disagree with you about Trump being the greatest threat. I think that we currently have two fascist parties. You say, oh, Trump is a fascist. Yeah, I agree. There are fascist tendencies in the Republican Party, but our party is also currently, and the Republicans have never done this, currently funding a genocide.
The
Trump never
Republicans
funded a
have
genocide.
absolutely done that. The Republicans have supported Israel just as much as Democrats, if not more, over the last few years. But okay, I think I really got to go right
there
now.
is
I really got
no,
to go right now. So I'll just end it off. We see things
there's no
very
equal to what's
differently.
happening in Gaza right now. There is no historical equal
We have
except
to
for what
go.
happened in Germany in the 40s.
We have to
It's what
go.
happened right now.
But Republicans have absolutely and currently are supporting everything Israel's doing, and they say we need to do more. That's the difference, okay? So you could say Democrats are bad, but Republicans will always, always, always be worse. And we can go issue by
And that's
issue.
not enough to win
But
elections. And again,
we
if
gotta
that was
go
good
right
enough, you'd have
now.
one.
So
That
I'm
was
gonna
good
stop
enough. You'd have
recording.
one party Democratic rule forever. You'd have one party
Thank
Democratic
you.
rule if what you were saying really mattered.
Inshallah, hopefully one day.